Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this live video. I'm absolutely delighted to say that I'm joined by Raj today, and we are going to discuss or hear from Raj about the very important subject of cybersecurity. It's obviously something that's become bigger and bigger in all our lives over the last few years, and what Raj is going to do for us today is kind of, I guess, where to start with it. For many of us non-technical people, that's kind of it's quite a scary thing. We don't really understand a lot of it. So Raj is hopefully going to try and unlock a few of those bits and kind of give you a nice overview. So yeah, you can probably introduce yourself better than me, Raj. So do you want to kind of just tell us a little bit about you and your business and that type of thing before we go on to the main bit?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Raj. I started my cybersecurity company just under 6 months ago now. And the purpose of my company was what I found over the years that these big corporate organizations have a lot of information and knowledge. When I started to work in the SME and the micro market, I realized they don't necessarily have the same information. So what I ended up doing in the last couple of years, I started to do my own webinars, a lot of training for small business owners. So I started a company called CYBIONE, like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm your only hope. Big Star Wars fan. So if anyone knows me, I've got a mug here of Baby Yoda as well. So that's where I've decided to just put together workshops to show you where to start. Why is cybersecurity important to you? Why would you be a victim? And let's say what building blocks you can put in place, like if you do martial arts or any kind of deadlifting or personal training, you have to maximize that the squat first. So you need to get your basics right. And with martial arts, before you can do the higher forms or the higher grading, you need to get your basics right. So in this talk and my presentation, I'll just go over the basics. So how do you get the basics in place, and how do you implement those controls?
That's great, Raj. That'd be fantastic. And I guess that your area of the world is probably one of those things where a lot of people maybe think this won't happen to me. I won't have any issues. That's probably quite common. And I think my theory on that is actually it's easier to think like that because it kind of scares us, anything like this. So just thinking, be in denial because I don't understand where to go with it, kind of thing is the easiest way to live. But I think it's really important to kind of decipher all this. So so I'll let you go, Raj, and obviously to mention and to anyone who's watching, if you've got any questions or comments as we go through, please do feel free to put them in the comment box on the various platforms that you're on. I appreciate that a lot of people do watch this kind of on demand, whether it's through our website or YouTube channel, whatever it might be. I'm sure that if you've got any questions, please put them to us and afterwards, and we can pass them on to Raj as well. I suppose he'd be more than happy to help on that. So, So any questions or comments you have will be great. But I'll leave it up to you, Raj, to inform and educate us all.
Brilliant. Right. So I'm going to start off with the basics, like I said. So what is cybersecurity? So what does it mean to you? So cybersecurity consists of, processes, technologies, and controls that we probably in our day-to-day life, we're probably thinking, how does that, what does that mean to me? So you probably lock your doors at night when you go to sleep or when you leave your house. In the world of cybersecurity, maybe you haven't locked your company front door, or you may have doors and windows open. So I want you to picture your house. And what the basic of cybersecurity is to ensure that those doors and windows are shut. And you're probably thinking, well, I don't have a big corporate network. What's my visibility of my business online? So if you ignore your business for now, think about your own social digital footprint. What information do you have out there online? So from your Facebook, your social media accounts, from your email addresses, all this information is online. So in a nutshell, what cybersecurity is to teach you how to be more secure across the cyberspace, you could say, or the digital market where you operate in. So talking about where you are, so think about, you've got this beautiful castle and you have these threat actors, so these cyber criminals that are continuously bombarding you. They're trying to maybe get your password. They may be trying to get another way in. Maybe you haven't updated one of your firewalls, so that could be another way in into your business. So what I want you to picture is this is continuously happening to a lot of organizations and us. And you're thinking, why would a cyber criminal try to attack me? Well, if you're, for example, Facebook is continuously being bombarded with attacks continuously. I think the last breach on Facebook was back in March, where over 500 million records got leaked online. So it does have a huge impact on all of us, because straight away what I did was I changed my password because I was aware of that link. I'll show you later on how to be a bit more knowledgeable where to find this information and to see if you have been part of a data leakage as well. So going back to that castle, you can see this is continuously happening. And I mentioned some of the facts earlier. So I'm sure you can see this all on my screen, but I just want to give you a bit more awareness of, why is cybersecurity important. And action fraud, just this information is running from 2020. It's from February to end of January 2021, and on that, and over 15,000 records were recorded about their social media accounts being hacked. Hence the reference to Facebook. This wasn't also Facebook; it was also the hacks were including LinkedIn, Instagram, your TikTok accounts, and so on. And what does this work out to? I've broken it down to, but on average, 42 reports, 42 cases were reported a day. And speaking to the various police departments, overall, only about 2% of all cyber crimes are actually reported. So if you say only 2% of if action fraud only received 2% of those reports, can you imagine how big or how many other people actually have got breached? So I reckon that number is a lot more higher than 15,000. So Hiscox also announced that one every small business or SME gets targeted every 19 seconds. So you can imagine just me talking away for the last few minutes, that there's easily about maybe 20 businesses that have been attacked. So around, as you can see the attempts on my screen there, you can say there's over 65,000 attempts daily that small, medium enterprise businesses being attacked, and 4,500 of them are successful. So, and that's on a daily basis. And the Northwest Cyber Resilience Centre, you've got 10 across the UK. They announced about 11,000 attacks on SMEs weekly just within Greater Manchester. So you can see the impact, and these threats are not going away; they're actually increasing. So you're probably thinking, why would I be a target? It's probably not going to be me. It's probably going to be one of those larger corporate organizations that you hear about on the news. And the reason why you hear about them on the news is because of large corporate organizations. You'll never hear about, these small digital agencies or these small charities being hacked. So why would a cyber criminal attack you? It doesn't matter who you are. If it's easy for them to get in, if they can get through that front door or that back door, they are likely to target you. And they're going to do this if you make it easy for them. And I'll give you an example of this. So you think about a big corporate organization that probably invest in a lot of, security controls. They might invest in a lot of cybersecurity controls so that, they can spot these victims once they're attacking their front door or once they're in. If you picture your business, think about, do you know if that front door is open? Do you know even if you have a front door? So, and once a cyber criminal is inside, do you have a security alarm to detect it? And 9 times out of 10, you probably don't. You probably don't know that a cyber criminal already has been inside your organization. And a typical breach is defined as when data has been leaked or you've been compromised. That's usually detected on average it takes about 6 months that you realize that actually somebody has been within your network and you have been compromised. As well as big corporate organizations actually have a lot of more of these controls in place. Hence why, if they are a victim, they have various controls in place to mitigate that risk. So, what motivates a cyber criminal? So, they have access to all the information we do. So, don't think about the cyber criminal locked away behind the computer screen. They're active. They're on social media. They may be posting videos. You may even see them in your, network groups. They're just like us. They do live in the real world, but they have a reason why what they do. So it could be could be due to they don't ethically like what a company's doing, so they might decide to attack and exploit that company. They might even decide to do some kind of ransomware attack, which is when you might have heard this about what happened in WannaCry a few years ago. I think it's back in 2017 when the NHS got hacked. And what that is, they encrypt all your files on your computer where you can't access anything. And the only way you can access it is by paying a ransom, which a cyber criminal will ask for, and that payment is usually in like a cryptocurrency. So the one that's commonly known about is Bitcoin, but to set up that account may take about a few days to set up. So can you imagine if you did get breached, how quickly would you be able to get up and running? Because maybe 3 days will basically cost you a lot of money if you can't get anyone within your business to do any work or produce or manufacture anything. The other side is the other threats you also have is insider threat, where somebody gets paid and internally they may also be also with that insider threat. It's not necessarily they're acting as a threat actor. They may also not have the knowledge of what to look out for, so they may click on an email, which is known maybe as a phishing email that you might be aware of from the TV licenses emails that you receive or the HMRC emails. But you also get cyber criminals that will use maybe act like you're a director within that company and they're trying to obtain some information, or that email may have a malicious attachment on it. As soon as you download it, known as malware, would probably encrypt your computer, or it opens up a doorway where the cyber criminal can get within your network. You may have a political reason why people attack you. You've got different state governments that do cyber attacks on each other. It may be due to competition. Somebody wants to know your trade secrets, so that's why they try to may approach and use different techniques to attack you as well. And cyber war, which is you probably hear a lot about this in the government, where you hear a lot of government saying, "Yeah, we need to invest more in cybersecurity." It's probably something that we don't see that's happening day in, day out. But these battles are going in continuously day in behind us without us seeing it, because it's not tangible. Just picture big tanks like that castle I showed you. That's continuously going on with different networks and state infrastructures in the US, the UK, China, Russia, all these states. There's these state actors that continuously attacking each other to gain information and finding a way to exploit them as well. So I can explain this a bit more on what goes on in the background, but I want to move on where do you start?
Can I ask a quick question, Raj, about the ransom one in particular?
Yeah.
I know this will obviously be different in every case, but is there kind of some examples of how much, if it's just a small business or a general business, are being asked for to give over to get their documents back?
So now we have a lot of data online. So a company could look on Companies House or look on some of these financial websites to see how much you're earning. So they'll know how much money you may have in the bank and what you can afford. And that's what usually they'll try and ransom you on for. So if you say, I don't have the money, well, they know you're lying because they can tell from your recent financial statements that you released. So it depends on the size of the company. So it could be vary anything. It could be in the millions. It could be in the tens of thousands. But
A big impact on whoever it is. They're going to make it big enough, aren't they?
Yeah.
To make it worth their while, essentially.
Yeah, and in terms of the SME market or the micro companies, they don't really fully recover after a ransomware attack because it's your brand and your reputation as well. So I think within the first 6 to 12 months, they usually go out of business if they don't manage it well. So it's very important to have these controls in place. from the onset. So cyber insurance is very important, but if you're not compliant with cyber insurance, then they're not going to pay out. So it's very important that you stay compliant with your cyber insurance. Like when you're doing your home insurance, if you state the wrong locks on your door, um, and you got broken into, your home insurance is not going to pay out. Same with the cyber insurance. If you don't have the right um, controls in place, they're not going to pay out. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. No, it's good. Yeah, just interesting to know, because obviously the danger of it, or potential danger, should I say.
Yeah, brilliant. So where do you start? So there is hope, and my little Star Wars fan trick there, like CYBIONE, I'm your only hope. So where do you start? So I always say it's very important to start with education, training. Depending on what industry you're in, there's certain controls you need to follow. So if you're in the working in the finance sector and you're taking cardholder payments and making a lot of those transactions, you fall under the payment card industry, PCI, and there's controls and procedures you need to adhere to stay compliant. You'd be surprised how many companies don't really look at this when they're collecting a lot of bank transfers online. So, but if you're using some kind of like intermediaries like PayPal or other go cardless, that's fine. But if you're still taking card payments over the phone or any other way from a chip and pin, a terminal, then you really need to look at how you fall into PCI DSS. So talking about the other sectors as well, you may be working in a nuclear sector or the NHS. So it's very important to see what training and terms you're governed by. So I always say start with education, understand what sector your company is based within, and also understand where what knowledge you have internally. Do you need to offer cybersecurity training? The standard term under most compliance rules is that you offer some kind of cybersecurity training. It may be a workshop once a year, or it may be every quarterly training, or you might get a external company to come in to do that training for you. It's also very important when managing cybersecurity for your business, understand where your data comes from and what current accounts you have out there. So your business social media accounts, for your own personal cyber well-being as well. It's understanding what do you put on your Facebook accounts. Do you put up pictures of your family? Do you tag yourself in when you go on holiday? And I'll tell you the reason for that is I had a scenario where we had a family meal. We went out. We all got tagged into Facebook. The house, we had 2 cars parked outside on the driveway. We had, the radio on. We had a few lights on, and the house still got burgled. We're lucky the cars didn't get burgled because they couldn't find the spare keys. But the criminal knew straight away that who was in that house, who wasn't in the house, because they could see where we were, half an hour away at that restaurant. So you can see the power of what social media can have as well. But also with social media is, what do you use Facebook for? Most people use it to remember people's birthdays. So what's one of the security questions at the bank or the HMRC when you're trying to obtain information is your date of birth. So I'm always conscious of where I save my date of birth or any personal information, where my office is, what my activity is. Around, do I need to tag myself in? Do I really need to tag myself in these locations? Do I need to share that image? Do I need to tell everyone in the world that I've gone to Dubai for 2 weeks and my house is empty? It's just those questions that I always tell people. Yes, social media is great, but ask yourself, do you really need to post it? And if you do post it, who else can see it? Is your account locked down? So it's still okay to share those things, but who can access your account? And I say a good exercise of this is go on somebody's phone or go on to a different device that doesn't have your social media accounts on it and Google yourself and see what's out there. And that should be able to tell you what information is currently out there on the web about you. But going back to the business, understand what data you store on the CRM. Do you use a CRM or do you use Excel spreadsheets? Where do you store all this information? What do your suppliers store information about you? Do they store any personal information about you? And then each of the individuals, what do they do on their social media accounts? What information are they sharing about your business? What do they have access to? Do they need access to some of those accounts to do your business? You're probably thinking, right, that's a lot of me to think about. Raj, where do I start? So start with a software register. I'll talk about an asset register as well shortly. Just list all the applications you're using and why you're using them. Are they open source? Do you have an end of life of those software applications? So are you going to, are you only using a free CRM system at the moment and eventually you want to move on to, I don't know, Microsoft Dynamics? Why, when, and when are you going to do that? So it just opens up questions, but also you get to understand where all your data is hosted. Is it hosted on Dropbox, SharePoint? Is it on Google Drive? And what's the reason for using those applications? Is it because it's free, or is it because someone told you that it's, it works well for your organization? So start with that, so you understand where all your data is. Also, with the asset register, and I'll say why this is important as well. I've also listed the software register in here. It's important to understand what hardware you keep, and I'll tell you the reason about hardware is, with hardware, with the likes of your laptop and your phone, they all will have an expiry date where you no longer be able to update that software. As soon as you unable to update that software, it opens up doors. Remember I was talking about that house and description earlier. What happens is it opens up that door, that window, because you can no longer keep that window shut because those devices never update. And it's very important to update your devices because there's new security vulnerabilities that pop up on these devices, and that's where the likes of Apple, Microsoft, and these various application developers are continuously updating. Hence why if the Apple phone or the iPhone, the Android were perfect, they wouldn't have so many software updates. So it's very important to update your technology, but also it's also very important to write down when you're going to keep that technology or that piece of hardware. Because you may have laptops that you want to keep for 10 years, but if they're not going to be able to update to Windows 11, that's going to have an end of life at one point. So you need to be familiar of what hardware and what assets you keep. And then further down, I gave an example of some of the, maybe some of the CRM systems or applications you're using. Are you using Office 365 or are you using G Suite? And are you looking to extend? Are you looking to stay in Office 365 or are you going to migrate over? So it's understanding why you purchased it and what you're using it for. Then what you also want to do is think about risk management. So once you gathered all that information, you got your asset, your software, you want to talk about what's the likelihood of that application or that asset being exploited by a cyber criminal. What's the chances of your website being hacked? What's the chances of that CRM that's outsourced being hacked, or your own custom-made CRM? And you'll go through this exercise. You may not know, which is perfectly fine, but you may know, you may have the answer. So you need to do a risk score on each of those applications. And then depending on your level of risk, you can then build a plan on each of those applications. So it could be anything from, your fire alarm system. How can that be hacked? How often do you update it? Do you check your CCTV camera software? Has that ever been tested? Your applications, your network, your firewalls, your Wi-Fi, has any of that been tested? How regularly do that get tested? And what's the chances of that being exploited? So within your risk management process, you'll go through each of these applications. You'll also go into the risks of your people as well, because it's very important to train them. But what's the chances of them receiving that malicious phone call or that phishing email where they may be downloading that link? What's the chances of that happening? I would say it's very high if you don't do that regular training. So I would say that I'll put that on a high mark what's the likelihood of it to happen. You just need to probably look at the last 6 months of how many phishing emails you have received. If you haven't, you're probably not recording them, so you probably need to find a better way of recording them, so you can then put a maybe like a risk to it. But I would say to every organization out there, you may have some kind of security in place, or you may have no security in place. And it's not only about phishing when it comes to education. There's loads of other elements about, your home security, what to watch out for when you're browsing the internet, all these other threat actors, which training will help. And by implement that training, you can then be more resilient to these cyber threats. So once you've built that plan and you're thinking about cyber, I always say, again, starting with the basics. And the well-known badges out there, one well-known badge out there is called Cyber Essentials. And Cyber Essentials was launched in 2014. You've got two versions, which is the basic and the plus. And many cybersecurity professionals may say it's not worth the paper it's printed on. But like I'm saying, well, if doing that deadlift, you're not going to go and deadlift, a 200k piece of weight straight away. You're actually going to work on your basic first. You're going to work on that squat. You're going to work on that movement. And with martial arts, you need to work on your form and your stance. Because if you don't, and you try to do more advanced stuff, you're going to be unbalanced. So what Cyber Essentials does, it looks at very basic controls, but it's to ensure that you get that squat right from the onset and you can build upwards from there. So it looks at, so if you were to Google National Cybersecurity Center, 10 steps to cyber, it lists out 10 steps. Cyber Essentials addresses 5 of those steps. And if you get Cyber Essentials, it is a prerequisite to work with the MOD, NHS, a lot of cyber assurances where a company will ask for, to meet our supply assurance needs, you need to get Cyber Essentials. And with Cyber Essentials, there also comes free cyber cover, as long as you stay compliant with Cyber Essentials. And what they say is if you implement Cyber Essentials correctly, it can reduce 80% of your internet risk. So, and it's a list of 80 questions that you fill out and a assessor marks you on that. Cyber Essentials Plus is Cyber Essentials Plus, where a cybersecurity consultant will check your questionnaire by doing a series of tests. So they'll test for if you have that password policy management, is your email filtering for malware, set up correctly. Do you have patch management? So remember I mentioned earlier about your software updates, making sure that you keep a record of if you're no longer able to update your software. Well, so patch management is just ensuring that you're regularly updating your software from your phones to your firewalls to your servers to your laptops to your desktops. So that's known as patch management. But also the rule of thumb in there is, and to stay compliant with a lot of cyber insurance policies, is that you need to do it within 14 days. So as soon as that update comes about, you need to make sure you do that update within 14 days. So you install that update to ensure that you stay compliant with Cyber Essentials. You also the cyber security consultant does a scan of your network. So externally, so just picture your house, just checking all the doors and windows are locked, and internally, just making sure that internally it's all secure. So when somebody's in, those doors and windows are quite secure. So and make sure that you're following best practices. It's a scan. Some people mistake the vulnerability scan to an ethical hack, where a cybersecurity professional manually uses various controls. They use these scanning tools as well, but they will actually spend time to actually brute force through that door. And once that door's open, they'll go inside and see what else they can get their hands on. Can they get to the safe, to the crown jewels within the organization? The other standards, you've got ISO 22301 and 27001. 27001 is the information security standard, which a lot of the GDPR controls are based on, the information controls. And a lot of larger corporate organizations would want you to have that standard before you can entertain working with them. So it's very important. It looks at best practices and making sure that you implement that within your organization. I would say if you're a growing organization, that's great. If you're not that big yet, so I'd say if you're around 20 employees, I would say maybe ISO is good to follow 27000, unless you need it due to working with other companies. You probably won't need to go for the ISO 27 standards, but at least you can follow them as a, as a benchmark on where you currently are. What does ISO 22301 is like a business continuity. So with disaster recovery, it looks at, so if you suffered a flood or fire, but also your backup strategy. So we always recommend when you back up your data, you actually have 3 locations, because Microsoft even do say that just please still use a third party to back up your data, just in case they're not able to recover all your data as well. So what Microsoft, so if you were using Office 365, you've got, you can maybe back up from, and depending what license you have as well, you can probably recover that data, just in case, just say if you did suffer a hack, you may be able to record that data. But if you're unable to record that data, what we recommend is maybe have another cloud storage and maybe having a one physical storage somewhere as well, where you can easily record. And the idea of a disaster recovery also is, yes, you've got great backup, but a disaster recovery situation will be if you've got a server that you actually use that gets hacked or that gets taken down, you're able to switch to another server seamlessly, and you wouldn't know that there was any downtime. And while you're fixing the other server, you can still continue your business as normal. So that's why if you're a big company that deals with a lot of data, and you only have that one cloud server or that one physical server that you're currently using, your it's backed up, but how quickly could you switch it if you did suffer an attack? So that's where the ISO 22301 becomes really useful on those guidelines. Lastly, the crest badge that you can see. So when you look, so with local government and big corporate organizations, they probably look for that badge for a cybersecurity company to go and do maybe that ethical hack or a test, because to get that badge, each consultant needs a minimum of 5 years industry experience. They probably need to pass very, very intense exams to get that badge, but also the company needs to go through various tests. So they need to make sure they've got ISO 27001. They also need to make sure they've got ISO 9001, which is quality management, and have all these insurances and controls in place. So when you're dealing with that badge, they've actually they're a creditable company, they're an ethical company, and you'll be in safe hands in using them. So yeah, Michael. So that's the presentation. They're my contact details.
Brilliant.
Any questions? I'm happy to. If anyone's got some questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you for that, Raj. I mean, I guess the thing I was thinking about then is for small businesses. How many small businesses do you think? I know it's a bit of a kind of finger in the air type thing, but actually do have at least something in place or a thought about it? Or do you think there's quite a lot of people who just, ignore the issue, I guess? What's your kind of experience from speaking to smaller businesses?
So with smaller businesses, they probably think that the rule of thumb is probably that they don't realize that they're responsible for it. They'll say, oh, my IT guy looks after that, my IT company. But it is your responsibility, because if you got breached, it's your brand, it's your reputation. It could be your livelihood, where and then it's going to be your face. You may not be that big where your face goes onto the media, but under GDPR, you need to report it to the ICO within 72 hours. So do you have that in place? And your IT guy, and the more professional IT companies will probably put their hands up and say, we're not your cybersecurity professionals. Even though we'll help you recover your data, you probably need some kind of cybersecurity incident plan. How do you deal with it? You probably want a cybersecurity company to come in and test what you currently got in place, because your IT and the IT directors and companies are great out there. There's some great companies out there that will do all the right things, but it's almost like, when you're building a house or you're getting your electrical check, you call that electrician. You don't call your builder to change that plug. And that's where the cybersecurity consultant comes in, right? you come in and it checks that the controls you have in place are fit for purpose for your business. We're not there to say what you got in place. We're not there to come in and fix those issues. We're able there to highlight those issues. If you need them remediating, yes, we can help. But ideally, we try to work with your IT provider or your IT director to identify those holes so you can plug those holes. Because what's going to happen if you get breached? Who are you going to call up straight away? You're going to call on. You can call your IT director, and poor guy, you probably wouldn't know where to start, or lady, she probably will have, working all hours of not just to get you back up and running. As well as a cybersecurity expert, if you've got those controls in place, you know what to do. So you have different stakeholders within your company. You have your marketing manager, you have your finance manager, you have you have the business owner, you have the IT guy, you have your security advisor, you may have your HR person, and all these people have an important part to play. So if you get hacked, you then do role plays within your organization. So step one, right, what do we need to go out to the public about that? What do we need to communicate? Maybe your systems are down and they can't access their accounts. That's going to be a big hit. You're going to get loads of phone calls. So how do you manage that? What's the right way to manage that? And it's like running a marathon, right? You can't do it today. You have to build yourself up to it. So and you can only do that when you practice. So this is where I would say that you're thinking, some people think, how much is this going to cost me? It doesn't actually, prevention is a lot cheaper than the actual cure. So the cost of a breach is probably tenfold. So I'll give you an example. To get that Cyber Essentials badge, where you just do it all yourself, and if you pass first time, it's £300 plus VAT. You can go through the IASME website. Brilliant. And if you're compliant and you got breached, they'll pay up to 25,000. So straight away, perfect. But you need to ensure that you stay compliant. If you didn't have that in place, and the ransomware attack cost you 50,000, but if you did that Cyber Essentials, you would probably realize where your gaps were from the onset. So you weigh up that 50,000 or that 100,000 or that £500,000 and the cost of not only paying out, but the stress it will cause you. You're paying your staff money to resolve it. You probably then have to go out for quotes and don't know where to go. And the cost for a professional company to come in, they'll probably charge you maybe something like 5 days or 15 days up front. And that could work out to be anything from 10,000 to 15,000. Weigh that to the £300 again. It's and then if you're like, okay, I'm going to pay £5,000 on it, you're probably going to save yourself a lot more money on the onset. And it also becomes an enabler, because when companies say, so what do you do about cybersecurity? Well, they'll know straight away when they see those badges on your signature on your website, which you can with the Cyber Essentials badges. You can also send some reports. So you've got ethical hacking reports, which are the pen test reports that you can share. You can also have policies and procedures in place, which you can show. Actually, we take cybersecurity a lot more seriously. If we did, and people want to know that their data is safe. And if you're doing business to them, B2B, like a lot of us do, they want to ensure that if you become a victim of cybercrime and you do a lot of business with them, the chances are they might fall victim to it as well. So this is why I talk about, with that data where it's all hosted, and it's very important to understand that if you're doing this, expect your suppliers to be doing the same. That's why you've got a big thing called supply assurance. So when they're managing the data, are they following best practices? So it's all good that you're doing, but your security might be fine. But if that email comes in and that invoice that comes in on a weekly basis and they change the bank details and you paid the invoice incorrectly, who's at fault? Is it them or is that you? And that's where a lot of disputes happen, and it still happens especially when people are buying houses with these big transactional costs. I was always say, speak to when you got a big amount, ring the company. Don't ring them from the number or the email they've sent you. Confirm the bank details over the phone. Maybe only transfer £1 and just make sure they've received it before you transfer 50,000 or 100,000 to them, because that would resolve a lot of issues there as well. So there's little techniques you can do, but again, that falls back to education. You don't know what you're subject to. You may be, that it's just that it will never happen to me. My guys are fine. And I'm too busy to do this. You may be too busy. So if you are too busy, delegate. Get one of your employees to be your cyber champion within your organization.
No, it's great advice. And one last question for me, actually, and you kind of talked a little bit about it there, was I think most people are kind of on an individual level are aware of various things to do with this. Email phishing is probably, or text as well, is quite a common thing. We've all probably seen things that happen and that could obviously lead to problems. Is there something in this world that's maybe like anything? The criminals are always trying to stay ahead of the curve. They're probably aware that people are aware of email phishing and scams. Is there something else that's kind of starting to become big in this world that can lead people down to problems?
So the biggest victims of cyber crime at the moment, this is why I say education is really important. It's us at home, it's our children, it's our grandparents. You probably receive the amount of phone calls I received where my grandfather was scammed. He had to go to the bank and transfer all his money to another bank account because he said that where his money wasn't safe in that bank. I think it's very important to educate your children, because children now, they don't use the same platforms we do. They use TikTok, Instagram. That's their influence. That's where they get the source of data from. So there's a lot of fake news and false information out there, which you need to be mindset. And how many of you shop on the internet for that bed or that fridge? The next thing you see, it's all over your social media on Facebook. Cyber criminals still use those platforms. So if you may be shopping for, I found this cheaper for £100. It may be a website you're never familiar with. You may have some fake reviews on there, and you buy that bed. The next thing you end up is you may get a smaller bed, or you might not get what you paid for. And that's where I'm seeing a lot more of, because what you're thinking, let's, to increase my brand awareness, why don't we do Facebook ads, or the cyber criminals use the same methods as we do as well. So just be mindful, because it's not only that phishing email or that phone scam or that email you receive. Just be mindful when you're clicking, or when you're filling out those surveys about which school you went into. I would say they're usually run by cyber criminals trying to get information about you, because it's very important. Be careful what information you share out there about yourself, because it's personal. Also, when it comes to online stuff, this is a big believer on, if your mother wouldn't approve it, don't do it. It's just, and because it will haunt you, and this is what cyber criminals can use. So going back to what I've seen, a big thing was around COVID. The cyber criminals knew exactly what the government were going to do before the government acted on it. There's emails, there's text messages. I'm sure you've seen a lot of them running around. I think with COVID, I think cybercrime increased by anything from 300 to 500%. And they knew what was going to happen. They knew what the government was going to do, and they already had everything ready. As soon as the government announced it, they did it. Remember, they can act a lot quicker than the government. They have abundance of time. They're not like us, cybersecurity, experts, that we have a small window where we may be helping you for maybe a day or two. They're working all hours of the day, and also they work in different countries as well. So there's probably going to be attacking us while we're sleeping. So and most attacks happen usually maybe on a Friday at 5 p.m. or like a bank holiday weekend around Christmas time, just before everyone breaks up. You probably see a lot of attacks as well. So they're usually the peak times.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned, you made me smile, and I saw something on Facebook the other day with one of these. I think words to the effect of, we all had a favourite pet as a child. What was your? Let's all remember them. Put their name in the post, and probably most people are aware that quite often a security question is, what is your name of your first pet, is often a security question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether it's banking or things like that. And there must have been, I remember seeing maybe 20,000 replies to this post, of which I assume was an attempt to get that information from people, and so many people have responded to it. It was frightening.
I remember that there was an image where someone put up a car saying "win the supercar." I think it was a Porsche. They said, "Comment below if you want it. Want. Then that's fine." What that cyber criminal is going to do now is send them a link to get more information about them, to get a prize of them, which you'll probably, I've been selected. Oh, please don't share it though. Don't say that you have been selected. and the next thing you know is you're a victim. So how did that happen?
Yeah.
Going back to something that you touched on about personal information about that, the pet name. Passwords are a big thing. So the way I see passwords is a key to your into your building, your house. So one thing that I really do stress is use a password manager, or if you have to, because we're all guilty of using the same password. What a password manager will do, if you store everything in there and you store all your passwords on your browser as well, it will tell you where you're using the same passwords. But also it will generate that more secure password for you. If you think I don't want to use the password manager, Raj, what if that gets hacked? They do get hacked. I can't, it's anything you put online is likely to be a victim, or it may never happen. But if you're thinking of a password, think of 3 different topics. So, but nothing personally related to you, was that someone can find out about you, not your parents' name, not your grandchildren's name. So a question I asked my dad, which it's changed now, and I'm sure people could find this out about me. I said to my father, so Dad, what's your password? Oh, it's your son's name. It's my grandson's name. Typical, right? So grandparents are probably using the kids and the pets' names. And ask somebody, oh, could you tell me your password to your Netflix account? The chances are that Netflix account, that email address, is probably the same account to their Gmail or the other accounts as well. People just wouldn't think about it.
No, absolutely no. I think it's something with I think it's fair to say that the key to this is doing what you can. You're never going to mitigate everything. Like you said, it's the same as locking your house. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get burgled, but it reduces the chances. Let's put it that way. And I think that's what we all need to that's the mindset, isn't it? To go with these things.
And if the worst case does happen, as long as you stay compliant and you followed all these controls, your insurance policies are going to pay out. It's going to be but the cyber criminal might be, I can't get in. You know what? I'm going to just go and rob the next door neighbor because it's a lot easier for me to get in. And that's literally what they'll do.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Raj. And there's lots of fantastic bits of information, things that I've been making notes, as you might have seen me going down. So there's things I need to do. I know that. So thank you very much for that. And I really appreciate it. And just to reiterate, I'll flick it on the screen just to finish. So if anyone wants to kind of get hold of yourself or connect on LinkedIn, please do. For whatever reason, if you can't find Raj, please drop me a message as well, and I'll point you in the right direction. I'm always happy to do that. But thank you so much, and we're gonna put this recording on our YouTube channel and various other places for people to watch, because I think there's lots of people who would really benefit from it. So thank you very much, Raj.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you for those that listened today. Thank you.